When authority meets defiance, the rain hammered against the glass walls of Blackwood. Industries like tiny fists demanding entry. Victoria Hayes pressed her palm against the cool window of the 32nd floor, watching the city blur into watercolor. Streaks below. Monday mornings in Manhattan had their own cruel rhythm, but this one felt different. There was electricity in the air that had nothing to do with the storm. Victoria had worked as executive secretary for 3 years.
How long enough?
To know that corporate shakeups usually meant pink slips and empty desks. The rumors had been swirling for weeks. New ownership, new management, new everything. The old CEO had vanished overnight, leaving behind only whispers about hostile takeovers and mysterious buyers with endless pockets. She straightened her simple black blazer and returned to her desk. The reception area gleamed with polished marble and chrome, intimidating visitors before they even reached the elevator. Victoria liked the order of it all, the predictability. Her desk sat like a fortress, guarding the executive floor. Every pen in its place, every file exactly where it belonged, at exactly 9:15. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. Victoria looked up from her computer screen, expecting to see Margaret from accounting or perhaps one of the junior executives rushing to their morning meeting. Instead, a stranger stepped out. He was tall, maybe 6 feet, with dark hair that looked like he had run his fingers through it during the elevator ride. His suit was expensive but not flashy, charcoal gray with a subtle pattern that spoke of quiet wealth rather than loud displays. What struck Victoria most were his eyes, pale blue like winter sky, and the way they seemed to take in everything without revealing anything in return. The man walked directly toward her desk without hesitation, as if he knew exactly where he was going. No visitor badge, no appointment on her calendar, no escort from security downstairs. Victoria stood up, her professional smile sliding into place. "Good morning. Do you have an appointment?" He paused at her desk, those winter eyes studying her face with an intensity that made her skin prickle. When he spoke, his voice was low, controlled. "I'm looking for Victoria Hayes." "That would be me." She kept her tone pleasant, but firm. "And you are?" "Jonathan Blackwood." The name hit her like a physical blow. Victoria felt the blood drain from her face as the pieces clicked into place. Blackwood Industries, the mysterious new owner everyone had been whispering about for months. The man who had bought their entire company and then disappeared like smoke, leaving everyone to wonder when he would finally show his face, and she had just challenged him like he was some lost delivery driver. Victoria's mouth went dry. Her carefully maintained composure cracked like thin ice. "Mr. Blackwood, I apologize. I wasn't expecting you today. Your office isn't quite ready, and nobody informed me of your arrival schedule." Jonathan tilted his head slightly, studying her reaction. "No one informed you because I don't make appointments with my own employees." The words stung, but there was no cruelty in his tone, just simple fact delivered without decoration. Victoria felt heat rise in her cheeks, a mix of embarrassment and something that might have been anger if she dared to feel it toward someone who could end her career with a phone call. "Of course not, sir. I should have realized. Let me show you to the executive suite." She moved around her desk, acutely aware of his presence behind her as they walked down the hallway. The silence stretched between them like a taut wire. Victoria's heels clicked against the polished floor, each step echoing her growing anxiety. The corner office had been empty for 6 weeks, waiting like a shrine for its new occupant. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, while rich mahogany furniture and Persian rugs spoke of old money and older power.
Wow.
Victoria had personally supervised the cleaning staff to ensure everything was perfect, though she had never imagined she would be giving the tours under such circumstances. "Your predecessor left detailed files on all ongoing projects," Victoria said, opening the desk drawers to show neat folders and labeled documents. "I've maintained his calendar system and contact databases. If you prefer a different organizational method, I can adapt." Jonathan walked to the windows, hands clasped behind his back. "What did you think of him? Harrison, I mean." The question caught Victoria off guard. Former CEO Richard Harrison had been her boss for 2 years, a demanding man who expected perfection, and rarely offered praise. But speaking honestly about him to his replacement felt like stepping into dangerous territory. He was very focused on results, she said carefully. That's not what I asked. Victoria turned to face him, finding those pale blue eyes fixed on her with laser intensity. There was something in his expression that suggested he already knew the answer and was testing whether she would be honest or diplomatic. He was difficult to work for, she admitted. Demanding. Sometimes unreasonable in his expectations. But he taught me to anticipate problems before they happened and to solve them quietly. And do you solve problems quietly, Victoria? Not the way. He said her name made something flutter in her chest. Not fear exactly, but something warmer and more dangerous. I try too, Mr. Blackwood. He nodded slowly, as if she had passed some invisible test. Good. I don't like surprises. Jonathan moved away from the windows, settling behind the massive desk, as if he had been sitting there for years rather than minutes. The transformation was subtle, but complete. This was his space now, his kingdom, and everyone in the building would bow to his authority. Everyone except Victoria, apparently, who found herself speaking before her brain could engage the filter that usually kept her employed. May I ask you something, Mr. Blackwood? One dark eyebrow arched upward. Go ahead, why did you buy us? Blackwood Industries has holdings in tech, real estate, energy. We're just a mid-sized consulting firm. We don't seem to fit your usual pattern. Question hung in the air like a challenge. Victoria immediately regretted asking it, but curiosity had always been her weakness. She needed to understand the forces that shaped her world, even when those forces could crush her without effort. Jonathan leaned back in his chair, studying her face with the same intensity he had shown earlier. When he smiled, it was barely. A curve of his lips, gone almost before it appeared. Maybe I like patterns that don't quite fit, he said quietly. They tend to be more interesting. Victoria felt heat spread through her chest at his words, though she couldn't quite explain. Why? There was something in his tone, something in the way his eyes seemed to see straight through her professional facade to whatever lay beneath. A knock at the office door broke the spell between them. Rachel Morrison from Human Resources peered, in her usual cheerful expression, faltering when she saw Jonathan behind the desk. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were in a meeting. We were just finishing, Jonathan said smoothly. He looked at Victoria. I'll need you to clear my schedule for the rest of the week. I want to meet with every department head individually. 1-hour sessions starting tomorrow. Victoria nodded, already making mental notes. I'll send out the meeting requests. This afternoon? Is there anything else you need to get settled? Just one thing. Jonathan stood, his presence seeming to fill the room even more completely than before. I don't operate the way Harrison did. I don't expect you to read my mind or anticipate my every need, but I do expect honesty, even when it's uncomfortable, especially then. Victoria met his gaze steadily, though her pulse had quickened. I can do that, Mr. Blackwood. Good. He moved toward the door, pausing beside her. For a moment, she caught his scent, something clean and expensive that made her think of winter mornings and quiet strength. And Victoria? Next time someone walks off the elevator without an appointment, feel free to challenge them. Shows good instincts. He left her standing in the middle of the office, staring after him with her heart hammering against her ribs. Rachel stepped closer, her eyes wide with curiosity and concern. Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. Victoria touched her throat, where her pulse still fluttered like a trapped bird. Something like that. As the afternoon wore on, Victoria found herself replaying their conversation, analyzing every word and gesture for hidden meaning. Jonathan Blackwood was nothing like what she had expected from the rumors. There was no arrogance, no need to dominate through volume or theatrics. His power was quieter, more dangerous because it didn't announce itself, but it was the way he had looked at her. It kept circling back through her thoughts, as if he saw something in her that she didn't even see in herself. As if she mattered in ways that had nothing to do with filing reports or managing calendars. Victoria shook her head, forcing herself to focus on the meeting requests she was sending out. Jonathan Blackwood was her boss, nothing more. The flutter in her chest when he said her name was just nervousness about job security. The way her skin had prickled when he stood close was just awareness of his authority. But as she worked late into the evening, out alone on the 32nd floor with only the city lights for company, Victoria couldn't shake the feeling that everything had changed in the space of one conversation. The careful, controlled life she had built was about to be turned completely upside down by a man with winter eyes and secrets deeper than the storm clouds gathering outside her window. When silence speaks louder than words, the second week of Jonathan Blackwood's reign began with small changes that rippled through the office like stones dropped in still water. Victoria noticed them first because noticing was her job, but also because she found herself watching him with an attention that had nothing to do with professional duty. He arrived each morning at exactly 7:30, an hour before most employees, carrying a simple leather briefcase and a coffee cup from the small shop 3 blocks away. Not the expensive chain downstairs in the lobby, but the family-owned place that served bitter brew in paper cups and knew their regulars by name. It was such an ordinary choice for a man who could afford anything that it made Victoria wonder what other surprises lay beneath his carefully controlled exterior. Jonathan moved through the office like a ghost made solid. Present, but not intrusive. He observed meetings without dominating them, asked questions that cut straight to the heart of problems, and had a way of listening that made people feel heard for the first time in years. The nervous energy that had plagued the staff since the buyout began to settle into something that might have been relief. But it was the quiet moments that unsettled Victoria most. The way he paused at her desk each morning with a simple nod that somehow felt more personal than words. The way his eyes found hers across crowded conference rooms, as if they shared some private understanding. The way he seemed to know exactly when she needed space and when she needed acknowledgement. On Wednesday afternoon, Amanda Sterling arrived from the London office like a hurricane in designer heels. Victoria knew her by reputation, Blackwood Industries' head of international acquisitions, known for her razor-sharp mind and complete lack of patience for anyone she considered beneath her notice. Amanda swept through the reception area without acknowledging Victoria's greeting, her red hair pulled into a severe chignon that matched her severe expression. "Where's Jonathan?" Amanda demanded, stopping at Victoria's desk with the air of someone accustomed to immediate compliance. "Mr. Blackwood is in a meeting with the development team. I can schedule you an appointment for later this afternoon." Amanda's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "I don't need an appointment. Jonathan and I have worked together for 5 years." She started toward the executive wing, but Victoria stood quickly, moving to intercept her path. "I'm sorry, but Mr. Blackwood specifically requested no interruptions during this meeting. I can let him know you're here, or you can wait in the conference room." "Listen to me carefully," Amanda said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "I've been managing acquisitions while you've been filing papers and fetching coffee. Jonathan will see me now because that's how our relationship works." Victoria felt heat rise in her cheeks, but kept her voice steady. "Understand you have history with Mr. Blackwood, but I have explicit instructions about his schedule today." The confrontation might have escalated, but Jonathan's office door opened, and he emerged with 3 members of the development team. His pale eyes took in the scene, immediately settling on Amanda with an expression Victoria couldn't quite read. "Amanda, I wasn't expecting you until Friday." "The Morrison deal collapsed," Amanda said, her professional mask sliding back into place. "We need to discuss alternative strategies immediately." Jonathan nodded, but his gaze flicked to Victoria. "Cancel my 3 o'clock. We'll need the conference room for the rest of the afternoon." As they walked away together, Victoria caught fragments of their conversation. Talk of overseas markets and billion-dollar transactions that made her own work feel small by comparison. She tried to focus on her computer screen, but found herself glancing up whenever Amanda's laughter echoed down the hallway. The afternoon stretched endlessly. Victoria handled phone calls and sorted emails, but part of her attention remained fixed on the closed conference room door. When it finally opened at nearly 6 o'clock, Amanda emerged first, her smile bright and predatory. "Wonderful catching up, Jonathan. I'll have the preliminary reports to you by tomorrow morning." She paused at Victoria's desk, her voice honey-sweet with poison underneath. Still here? Most secretaries would have gone home by now? I stay until Mr. Blackwood leaves, Victoria replied evenly.
How dedicated.
Amanda's smile sharpened. Jonathan does inspire loyalty in his employees. Among other things, the implication. Hung in the air like smoke, Geisa kept her expression neutral, but Amanda's words found their target. Was she just another secretary developing an inappropriate crush on her boss? Was her awareness of him that obvious to everyone else? Jonathan appeared behind Amanda, his expression unreadable. Your flight leaves at 8. You should go, of course. Amanda touched his arm briefly, a casual gesture that somehow felt intimate. Think about what we discussed. Some opportunities don't wait for perfect timing. After Amanda left, silence settled over the office like dust after a storm. Victoria busied herself with filing, hyper-aware of Jonathan's presence as he stood in his doorway. Looking out at the city lights beginning to twinkle in the gathering dusk, Victoria. She looked up to find him watching her with those winter blue eyes. Yes, Mr. Blackwood. Walk with me. It wasn't a request. Victoria saved her work and gathered her coat, following him to the elevator in silence. They rode down 32 floors without speaking. The only sound, the soft hum of machinery, and her own heartbeat echoing in her ears. The lobby was nearly empty at this hour. Just the security guard at his desk and the soft echo of their footsteps on marble. Instead of heading toward the street, Jonathan led her to a small alcove near the building's coffee shop, where leather chairs faced floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the plaza. Sit, he said quietly. Victoria perched on the edge of a chair, her hands folded in her lap. Jonathan settled across from her, close enough that she could see the faint lines around his eyes, the shadow of stubble along his jaw. Tell me about Amanda, he said. The request caught her off guard. I'm not sure what you mean. Your impression of her, your professional opinion. Victoria chose her words carefully. She's clearly intelligent and experienced. Very confident in her abilities. That's not what I asked. The same challenge he had issued during their first meeting. Jonathan seemed to have no patience for diplomatic non-answers, preferring uncomfortable truth to comfortable lies. Victoria took a breath, deciding to risk honesty. She's used to getting what she wants through intimidation, either useful or obstacles, and she doesn't think I'm useful. Jonathan leaned back in his chair, something that might have been a smile ghosting across his features. You're more perceptive than she gives you credit for. She thinks I'm just a secretary with a crush on her boss. The words slipped out before Victoria could stop them. Heat flooded her cheeks as she realized what she had just admitted. Jonathan's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air between them, subtle tension that made her skin prickle. Are you? He asked quietly. Victoria met his gaze steadily, though her pulse hammered against her throat. I don't. No. The honesty surprised them both. Victoria had meant to deny it, to laugh it off as ridiculous. Instead, she had given him the most truthful answer she possessed. She didn't know what she felt for Jonathan Blackwood, only that it was more complicated than simple attraction and more dangerous than professional admiration. Jonathan was quiet for a long moment, studying her face in the soft light filtering through the windows. When he spoke, his voice was lower than before, intimate in a way that made her breath catch. Amanda and I have a history. We've worked together for years, traveled together, closed deals together. She's brilliant at what she does. Victoria nodded, though each word felt like a small knife between her ribs. But, Jonathan continued, she's also someone who believes relationships are another form of business transaction. Everything has a price. Everything can be negotiated. Everything serves a purpose. And you don't agree? I think some things should exist without strings attached, without ulterior motives or strategic advantages. His eyes found hers again. Like honesty, like trust, like whatever this is growing between us. Victoria's breath caught at his words. The admission hung in the air between them, fragile and dangerous as spun glass. She wanted to ask what he meant, wanted to demand clarity and definitions. But something in his expression warned her that pushing too hard might shatter whatever delicate understanding they were building. I should go, she said softly. It's getting late. Jonathan nodded, but didn't move to stand. Victoria? Tomorrow, Amanda will probably try to undermine your position. She sees you as competition. Competition for what? For influence, for access, for things that matter to me. He stood then, offering his hand to help her up. When their fingers touched, Victoria felt electricity arc between them, quick and sharp as lightning.
Ow.
Don't let her make you doubt your worth. Victoria walked home. Through the city's streets, her mind churning with questions she couldn't answer, Jonathan's words echoed in her thoughts. Mixing with the memory of Amanda's predatory smile and the feeling of his hand against hers, she had spent 3 years building a careful, controlled life where emotions stayed safely buried beneath professional competence. Now Jonathan Blackwood was unraveling that control with nothing more than quiet attention and unexpected honesty. As she climbed the steps to her small apartment, Victoria wondered if she was strong enough for whatever came next. Because something was definitely coming. She could feel it building like storm pressure in the air. Inevitable and potentially devastating. But for the first time in years, she found herself curious rather than afraid. Jonathan saw something in her that she was only beginning to recognize. In herself. Something worth defending. Something worth risking everything to explore. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. New tests of whatever fragile thing was growing between them. But tonight, Victoria allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, she was brave enough to see where this dangerous path might lead. When desperation meets devotion, the crisis began with a phone call at 3 a.m. Victoria woke too. Her cell phone buzzing against the nightstand, Jonathan's name glowing on the screen like an emergency flare. She fumbled for the device. Her heart already racing with the kind of dread that comes from unexpected calls in the deep hours of night. Victoria? His voice was rough, strained in a way she had never heard before. I need you to come in, now. She was already throwing back covers, reaching for clothes. What's wrong? Tell you when you get here. Can you be in the office in 20 minutes? I'm on my way. The streets of Manhattan were eerily quiet at this hour. It's populated only by taxis carrying late-night revelers and early-morning workers who moved through the city like ghosts. Victoria's heels echoed off empty sidewalks as she hurried toward the gleaming tower that housed Blackwood Industries, her mind spinning through possibilities. Emergency board meeting. Hostile takeover attempt. Financial crisis. Nothing good ever happened at 3 a.m. in the corporate world. The lobby. Security guard looked surprised to see her, but waved her through after checking her identification. The elevator ride to the 32nd floor felt endless. Each floor ticking by like a countdown to disaster. She found Jonathan in his office, still wearing yesterday's shirt with the sleeves rolled up and the tie long abandoned. Papers covered every surface of his desk, and the glow from multiple computer screens painted harsh shadows across his face. He looked like a man who had been fighting a losing battle for hours. "Thank you for coming," he said without looking up from the document in his hands. "I know it's late. What's happening?" Jonathan finally raised his eyes to meet hers, and Victoria felt her breath catch at the exhaustion and something deeper. Something that looked almost like fear written across his features. Morrison Industries is trying to force a hostile takeover. They've been quietly buying up shares through shell companies for months. As of midnight, they control 38% of our stock. Victoria sank into the chair across from his desk, the implications hitting her like a physical blow. How is that possible? Very carefully planned and perfectly legal. Thomas Chen has been feeding them inside information about our quarterly projections, our client contracts, everything. They needed to time their move perfectly. Thomas Chen, the board member who had seemed so supportive during the transition. Victoria remembered his friendly smile, his offers to help her navigate the changing corporate structure. The betrayal felt personal, even though she barely knew. Him? What can we do? Jonathan's laugh was bitter. Not much. They've structured the takeover to avoid most of our defensive measures. By Monday morning, they'll call for an emergency board meeting to remove me as CEO and dissolve the current management structure, including my position, including everyone who isn't part of their new vision. Jonathan leaned back in his chair, running his hands through his hair. Morrison Industries doesn't acquire companies to improve them. They strip assets, sell off valuable pieces, and dump the rest. 300 employees will lose their jobs within 6 months. Victoria stared at the papers scattered across his desk, trying to process the magnitude of what he was telling her. People she worked with every day, friends like Rachel from Human Resources, dedicated employees who had given years of their lives to building something meaningful. All of it about to be destroyed for profit. There has to be something we can do, she said. Some legal challenge, some way to fight back. There is one option. Jonathan's voice was so quiet she almost missed it. But it's complicated. Tell me. He stood and walked to the windows, hands clasped behind his back in the gesture she had come to recognize as his thinking pose. The city spread out below them, millions of lights twinkling like earthbound stars, beautiful and indifferent to human struggle. Morrison Industries has a clause in their takeover bid that excludes family-controlled businesses. It's designed to avoid complications with generational wealth transfers, estate planning, that sort of thing. Victoria waited, sensing there was more. If I were married, if my wife held a significant percentage of company shares as part of a family trust, the hostile takeover would face months of additional legal challenges. Enough time to mount a proper defense, maybe find white knight investors. Understanding dawned slowly, like sunrise creeping across a landscape she had never seen before. Victoria felt her pulse quicken, though she wasn't sure if it was from fear or something more dangerous. You're talking about a marriage of convenience, she said carefully. I'm talking about survival, for the company, for the jobs, for everything we've built here. Jonathan turned from the window, his pale blue eyes finding hers across the darkened office. But it would have to be someone I trust completely, someone who understands what's at stake. The silence stretched between them, heavy with implications. Neither quite dared to voice. Victoria's mind raced through the logistics, the legal complications, the sheer audacity of what he was suggesting. But underneath the practical considerations ran a current of something else, a recognition that this moment had been building since their first meeting. Why me? She asked quietly. Because you're the only person in this building who has ever told me the truth when it was uncomfortable. Because you stood up to Amanda Sterling when she tried to intimidate you. Because in 3 weeks, you've never once asked me for anything, except the chance to do your job well. Jonathan moved closer, stopping just in front of her chair. This close, Victoria could see the exhaustion in his eyes, but also something fiercer, more determined. And because I trust you in ways I haven't trusted anyone in years, he admitted. But this isn't about feelings or romance or anything that... Simple. This would be a business arrangement with very specific terms and a clear exit strategy once the crisis passes. Victoria stood, needing to be at eye level with him for this conversation. What kind of terms? Full legal marriage? But separate living arrangements. You'd receive company shares worth approximately $50 million, transferred to a trust in your name. The marriage would last exactly 1 year, giving us time to restructure ownership and implement new defensive measures. After that, quiet. Divorce, you keep the shares as compensation for the risk you took. $50 million. The number was so large it felt abstract, like play money in a game she didn't understand. Victoria had never imagined having that kind of wealth. The freedom it would represent, the choices it would open. But looking at Jonathan's face in the soft glow of the office lights, she realized money wasn't what made this decision complicated. It was the way her heart had started beating faster when he mentioned trust. It was the recognition that saying yes would change everything between them, whether they intended it to or not. What if people think it's real? She asked. What if they assume we're actually in love? Something flickered across Jonathan's expression, there and gone so quickly she might have imagined it. Would that bother you? The honest answer surprised her. I don't know. Jonathan stepped back, giving her space to think. You don't have to decide tonight. Sleep on it. Talk to a lawyer if you want, though you'll need to sign confidentiality. Agreements first? This only works if Morrison Industries believes it's genuine. Victoria nodded, though her mind was already spinning through possibilities. If I said yes, when would this happen? Friday. We need the legal documents filed before Monday's board meeting. 3 days. Victoria felt dizzy at the compressed timeline. The way her entire future was suddenly balanced on a decision that had to be made in hours rather than weeks. "I should go," she said. "Think about this properly. Victoria." Jonathan's voice stopped her at the door. When she turned, she found him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "I know what I'm asking. I know it's not fair to put this on you. But you're the only person I trust to help me save what we've built here." The weight of that trust settled on her shoulders like a heavy coat. 300 jobs. The future of a company that had become more than just a workplace. The chance to stand up to corporate raiders who saw human lives as acceptable casualties in their profit calculations. Victoria walked home through the pre-dawn darkness, her mind churning with questions that had no easy answers. By the time she reached her apartment, the eastern sky was beginning to lighten, painting the city in shades of gray and gold. She made coffee and sat by her window, watching the world wake up around her. In a few hours, she would have to call Jonathan with her answer. Yes or no. Simple words that would reshape her entire existence. But as Victoria sipped her coffee and watched the sunrise paint Manhattan in colors of hope and possibility, she realized the decision wasn't really about money or business arrangements or even saving jobs. Important as those things were, it was about the man who had seen something in her worth trusting with his future. The man whose quiet strength had made her feel valuable in ways she had almost forgotten were possible. The man who was asking her to take the biggest risk of her life. Based on nothing more than faith in each other, Victoria pulled out her phone and scrolled to Jonathan's number. Her finger hovered over the call button as her heart hammered against her ribs. Some decisions couldn't be made with logic or careful analysis. Some decisions required a leap of faith into unknown territory, trusting that the person on the other side would catch you if you fell. Victoria pressed call and waited for him to answer, knowing that her next words would change everything. "Jonathan, it's me?" "My answer is yes."